So, hello. I'm not starting this in the usual like upbeat, this week on my feed style because this isn't really a this week on my feed so much. Believe me, after some of the start of the year craziness that happened, where I just made a quick video just saying, "Hey, let's have more, goodness and positivity in 2024." I fully intended for this week's to be, more than normal stuff in that. But there was just some things that were nagging at me over the course of the week. And I want to sort of preface, the main discussion by saying that this does have to do with the Mythic Sites document about Poppy the Lich King. And so there will be some talk about uh, abusive behavior and manipulation, gaslighting, and other things. And if that's too much for you, I totally understand. And I hope you have a great day. And feel free to stop watching. I will not hold it against you. However, what I will say is that I will not be going over the entire document and discussing things. It would feel really disrespectful for me to turn a 96-page document where multiple people recount, their stories and their experiences with an abuser into content that would be really disrespectful, in my opinion. So, what I'm going to talk about is two things that sort of came to mind when reading over the document. One of these things I don't plan on talking about here in this video because it's something that there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff tied up around it, and that is parasociality. Parasociality and parasocial relationships are something that I have talked about on stream. It's something that I have said, I'm very much, against, this kind of, certain kinds of content because it, seems to breed and profit off of parasociality. And hearing some of the audio recordings where Poppy just very plainly states that, you don't understand Twitch parasocial relationships, and makes it clear that most of his professional relationships are about getting people obsessed with him, getting people wanting him, are about promoting parasocial relationships as a way of getting other people to pay his bills. And that's something that I find disturbing to hear. And I definitely have a lot of thoughts about that, but I would rather take time to organize those thoughts and script it out. And hopefully, I will be making that into a future video. I don't know when it will be. I've got a couple video projects that, that are in various stages of like editing and whatnot. And so I'll probably finish one, maybe more video projects before I really sit down and focus on that. So no estimated time of arrival on that. But what I do want to talk about here in this video is an attitude that I've heard from some people who were uh who found out about the situation afterwards and were taken aback by finding out the various things that Poppy has been up to. And in also one of his victims who spoke up in the document, Johnny, and it's this sentiment of guilt and shame over being, mistreated and being manipulated and everything, with Johnny saying in their part of the document, "I'm sorry I've fallen for his lies for so long, truly." And also, Poppy is someone who resents those he sees as competitors and eagerly abuses and takes advantage of people he sees as beneath him. "I'm sorry to say I was one of those people for way too long." And it just made me think about how people respond to abuse and how the fallout of stuff like this sort of hits people. And I want to say for anyone who has felt something like this, not even just over the Poppy situation, but other, situations, maybe personal stuff that you've gone through. And maybe, Johnny, if you're listening, I want this to reach you too, that you have no shame, no guilt in the situation. Abusers are masterful manipulators more often than not. And that is because the way that they keep getting away with being abusers is that they convince their victims that nothing is wrong. They convince them that they're not really actually being abused or that it's their fault in some way, shape, or form. And they convince people on the outside that everything is normal inside the relationship. Nothing's wrong. As a matter of fact, they are such a good and wonderful person, you would never even begin to believe that they would do such a thing. It's unthinkable. And seeing the people who, at first, when Poppy said, "Oh, I'm being, blackmailed, I'm being, slandered and everything," they were like, "Oh no, Poppy, I've known you for so long. You're such a good person. I know that you would never do such and such thing. You're too good of a person," stuff like that. And then come around after Mythic Sites released her document that you can see behind me here and be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe all the stuff was going on." And I've had some people that I know express, guilt and remorse for promoting him in the past, and just some of them seem to be just absolutely buried in this guilt and the shame for believing in the image that Poppy showed the world. And I just want you all to understand that whether it's the Poppy situation or someone else who was mistreating you or an abuser that was in your life that you didn't personally deal with, but you sort of were on the outside and found out way too late what was going on. You don't have any shame or any guilt. This is a kind of really sick last laugh that a lot of abusers get on people who have interacted with them, where everyone else feels guilty and shamed for not seeing certain signs, earlier and stuff like that. And they are masterful manipulators, as I said, and most of the times you're not going to see it coming. You might not even realize how bad it was until afterwards, and suddenly you're talking about some story and people just look at you and they're like that was really wrong of them. And suddenly you realize stuff that was maybe normalized to you by that person was actually awful. It was mistreatment. It was stuff you didn't deserve and you didn't realize it. It is not our responsibility to go around doubting everyone and looking for any little sign of any wrongdoing in everything they do. It is people's responsibility to be good people. It wasn't our responsibility to constantly be looking for deception in Poppy. It was Poppy's responsibility to be the good person that he wanted the world to believe he was. And he had countless opportunities every single day to be that good person. And he wasn't consistently. Rarely in front of others, but in public, consistently. He was an awful, abusive, and manipulative person. And that was his choice. What he did to other people was his choice. And now people need to be able to move on and to live their lives and not feel guilt because they should have done something. They, whoever hurt you, should not have done what they did. You didn't have a responsibility to do something. They had a responsibility not to hurt you. Plain and simple. They had a responsibility to be honest with you, treat you right, and to just be a good person. But that wasn't the case. He wanted to look like a saint to mask the deeply awful things that he was doing, like a modern day Richard III. And thus I clothe my naked villainy in old odd ends, stolen out of holy writ, and do seem a saint when most I play the devil. That was how he lived. That was how he acted. That was how he conducted himself in this community. And it was his choice to be an awful and wicked soul. It was his choice to mistreat others. And none of the people who he tricked, none of the people who he mistreated deserve to feel guilty, should be apologizing for being lied to, for being mistreated. So, yeah, I suppose that's what I really wanted to say. I just see way too much pain coming out of this, way too much heartache coming out of this, from people who really don't deserve to feel the way that they do. So, to the people who were abused, to Mythic, to Johnny, to Spoodles, to everyone else who wasn't in the document but still had their experiences. I hope more than anything that you can find peace and closure now that he's been exposed, now that he's, been out deleting his socials and everything. I admit I hadn't checked today, but last time I checked, his Twitch was still up, and hopefully that will be gone soon too. But I hope that you all can find peace and comfort in the community now that he's been exposed, now that he is basically pulled himself away from the community, now that his name is mud, essentially. And I hope that going forward you can have an amazing journey. Not just as VTubers, but as people. So take care of yourselves. Look out for one another and be good people consistently, always. And ta-ta.